What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to 8 Cubes. We have a very special guest host today. It is Ordinary Harry. He is back as the guest host on 8 Cubes. Welcome, Ordinary Harry. Of course, make sure to check out all of his links in the description. And we're going to start with GORR the God Butcher. GORR the God Butcher is a 6-cost, -1 power card with an ability that is an ongoing ability that gives him +2 power for every on-reveal card on the field. Yours and your opponent's. I have typically underrated every single big 6-drop that has ever come out. I underrated Red Hulk. I underrated all of these cards. Every time a big 6-drop come out, from High Evo Hulk to Blob to Red Hulk, even Cannonball, if you want to count that, I have always been too low on cards that say you win a lane. Do we think GORR is going to be a card like that is just so big that it just wins a lane every time?
Yeah, of course. I feel like you put it perfectly. It is just another big six cost card that wins a lane. And historically, those have been insanely good,
Mm-hmm.
especially on release. And this one is a little bit special because it is a 6 cost card that you can easily discount with Ravonna. And
Mm-hmm.
Ravonna's been I know Ravonna's been out of the meta for a long time, but I feel like, you can build around it with a Ravonna and kind of build a deck similar to, let's say, a Ronan deck that's a little few people are playing right now. I feel like the card is going to be really, really, really good. One of probably the best release of the month, uh, and definitely a lane winner for sure.
There are two things that really come to mind when I look at this card and when I think about the concept of previous lane winners. Because previously, like, obviously, whenever I get something wrong, I try to like audit my thought processes and figure out what it is that I got wrong about it, right? Winning a lane is really good, but has it been as good since they nerfed Professor X and Storm, which are the best cards to play with a card that wins one lane instantly on the final turn of the game? Right? Like, is it as good to win a lane, to just win a lane, if you are just winning that one lane? What I'm getting at here is this might actually be a clog card. You know those clog decks full of on reveals that go to your opponent's side of the board that want to play a big guy that wins one lane? When you're looking at decks that can actually do stuff, this goes in with the Goblins and Ravonna. That seems really interesting to me. The second thing that comes to mind is a lot of people are going to look at this as a Mr. Negative card. And I think that's incorrect. And I think there's like a specific thing to talk about with Mr. Negative here, where this could be a Mr. Negative card, but it won't fundamentally change the deck. Because Mr. Negative as a deck with this card in it is still going to be about, did you Mr. Negative or not? You're winning when you do that regardless. It's not like that's the part of the deck that's in question. The part of the deck that's in question is the consistency of doing that. So your payoff getting like 5% better, okay, well, it was already higher than any other deck was going to be able to beat in terms of points most of the time anyway. So you're in kind of the same spot you were in, where you're vulnerable to tech and not really anything else ever. So where are you at with where you expect this card to land with regards to, we don't have Professor X, we don't have Storm. The only way to make sure you win another lane before turn 6 is to clog, but he does seem to go in that shell. What do you think about that?
I think that, yeah, he does work well with Clog, but also Mill has seen a small resurrection lately. I can see Gore being there. As far as Mr. Negative goes, I kind of sort of not disagree with you. I agree that the deck is all about Mr. Negative, but that deck does run Ravonna naturally, right?
Yeah.
It runs Ravonna, it runs Mystique, it runs Zola.
Mm-hmm.
So you can
Oh,
see
that
where
is
I'm going,
interesting.
right?
Yeah, I can't see where you're going with that. Maybe you just have like a better backup plan if you're able to do
Yes.
that. But like, how many honor reveals are you putting on the board in a world where you're doing like Ravonna stuff? Like, are you actually
I
putting a
mean,
lot of on? Is it going to be
you are
big
gonna
enough?
put you are gonna put honor wheels on the board. You're gonna put your Ironheart. You're gonna put your what's the other is 3 cost, the 0 power. Um,
Just
the
Sandra
that
Nova
get
usually.
Yeah, you have your Nova. There's so many cards that you can play that are only wheels. It's not just your own reveals, it's also your opponent's own reveals.
Mm-hmm.
And then Zola's on reveal if you're going to use that. So I can see that as an alternate line for Mr. Negative. We might see something spicy there. Like, you never know.
Yeah.
So sometimes the meta goes in weird directions, and people do love their Mr. Negative decks. So
Yeah.
it's probably going to be like a contingency. I don't even know the word. Like a second plan.
Contingency.
Contingency, yeah.
Yes.
A second plan you can use. And kind of, you remember there was a point in time where Black Panther was in that position,
Yes.
in that role. So now it can be GORR. And yeah, I think it can meaningfully improve that deck. Even when you don't draw your Mr. Negative by having a secondary plan. But as far as the card, I think it's going to be strong. I definitely believe it's going to be strong. Historically, just historically, just looking at every single big power card that has been released, they've been crazy good. They've been insane. And this card is going to be huge.
Yeah, the two shells I'm probably gonna play it in are something with Clog and something with Anti-Venom. And that just seems like free, right? Like you hit this with Anti-Venom, it actually gets a buff. It's free and it gets a buff. Alright, that seems good. Next up is Fenris Wolf, who is a card I find personally very difficult to rate. I have released 2 videos in the last 2 days or about specific Fenris Wolf decks. I guess the last 4 days by the time this comes out. And those are Goon Knight and the Fenris Wolf midrange deck. And I think that it's probably impossible to play the Moon Knight strategy, aka the Goon Knight strategy, if you do not have Fenris Wolf right now. And I think if you are playing gladiator type stuff, it is a meaningful boost to that. But the question I have is how long is that going to last? Because what makes this card a worthwhile expenditure of tokens, of spotlight caches, is not does it go with this stuff and is this stuff good right now? It's does it go with this stuff and will this stuff be good in the future? And what I'm really worried about is like, yeah, it's really strong right now. Okay, well, now it's tomorrow and GORR comes out and you're playing Baron Zemo Fenris Wolf and people are clogging you. And you're like, oh, I can't play this deck anymore. And now you're just like, oh, I spent 6,000 tokens because KM Best said this was good at the time. And I think this is the hardest part of card reviews for me because I think objectively right now, this card is quite strong. It would be worth picking up if I could guarantee that it would continue to be that strong for a month or two, but I can't guarantee that. And I think that puts me in a very awkward position, especially when I expect the possibility of GORR being a clog card to be quite real. And because it's a new card, you pick up Fenris Wolf towards the end of the week, everyone gets GORR, you get clogged, you cry yourself to sleep, you curse my name, you go into my YouTube comments and tell me it's all my fault. This happens literally all the time. You'd be surprised. And that makes doing any kind of Fenris review very hard. If you want to play Gladiator Shang decks, he is the best card you can play with that. If you want to play Moon Knight decks, he is the best card you can play with that. If you expect those decks to keep relevance in the metagame, right now they are quite relevant. If you expect them to keep that, then you should pick them up. But you have to temper your expectations based on, do you expect these decks to maintain their relevance?
I feel like the card is, well, the way I look at cards usually, I value how fun the card is more than how competitive it is.
Casual.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why a lot of many cards, I will grab them and have fun with them and value them very high, while other people won't because they're not very good competitively.
Yeah.
But I feel like Fenris is a card that has landed very high on the fun scale, but also very well competitively right now. So I believe it's an easy pickup because you're gonna have fun with it no matter what. Like you don't need to win every game. You don't need to be rank 1. Just you need to have fun when you're playing the game, and that's what I think that's what most people are looking right now into every card game that they're playing. Yeah, the competitive players are a very small percentage of the player base. So I feel like the card is a safe pick. You get to play decks that you otherwise wouldn't be able to play. You get to Shang-Chi something huge and then bring it back to your board. There's also like it's also, I think, a meaningful addition to Serra Control. So if you like that type of deck, you can play that because you have so much control and so many cards that disrupt or destroy or whatever your opponent's board. So yeah, I feel like the card is strong. I feel like it's fun, super fun. I give it a 10 out of 10 fun factor. And then it's up to you what you want to do.
There has been a massive amount of discussion about Arishem as a card recently. I would say that you and I, Harry, are on opposite sides of this discussion where I am not nearly as upset losing to this card as other people tend to be. And people, like, I feel like the dynamics are a little more generally understandable, even if, like, in specific you lose to random BS some of the time. Like, for me, a lot of what people get mad about as Arsham is I could never have played around that. But I'll tell you what makes me more mad than that is when a deck like Scream swaps out its 6-drop and you play around Magneto and they play Heimdall. How was I supposed to play around that? Like, that makes me way more angry. Like, that kind of stuff, like that, where it's like actively taking advantage, like that, it's clever, it's smart, don't get me wrong, I get it. But like when things like that happen, or like when you're playing against the move deck and you have to choose whether or not you want to play around Heimdall or Eliath, and you just like guess wrong, there's nothing, you had nothing to do with that decision. It was just a pure 50-50 on which one of them they had and which one of them they felt like playing. And I feel like that kind of stuff gets ignored when people talk about Arishem. They're always like, oh, they're just randomly generating the perfect answer. And it's like, I don't find that nearly as annoying as the stuff that, like, because Arishem doesn't really have access to like synergy tools the way other decks do. And so when it's just like randomly generating like tech cards and big guys, I get that. That makes sense to me. I understand that. Like, I understand that when I stay on turn 6, there's a chance that I just get like randomly blown out by some wacky BS. That's that I like, that's baked in for me. But the, like, it doesn't feel meaningfully worse than Scream deck switched its 6-drop and you played around the wrong guy, or Eliath Heimdall 50-50. What is it about this card that makes it feel so much worse than that to you?
I feel like the reason you don't feel it's two things. Number one, I feel that like the reason that you don't care about Arisham, quote unquote, you don't mind Arisham, is because you're mostly a ranked player.
Mm-hmm.
You play ladder,
Yeah.
and on ladder, obviously, if you're in a bad spot or if there's a card that can destroy you or whatever, you can just leave the game.
Yeah.
Go new one, right? But the real problem with Arisham is in Conquest mode. So people
Okay.
who are playing Conquest, and you'll play like 7 games against an Arisham, and you've seen 3 cards from their deck. Like, you literally don't know what they're playing. You don't know what's coming next. You don't know what you're playing against. There's no planning, because Conquest is all about information. Many, many, many times I've lost like a 4 cuber at the beginning, or even more cubes, and then I see their whole deck, and then I realize, oh, these are the cards I need to play around, and then they can't get a single win out of me after that, right? But Arisham, you can't do that, because every single game you just lose to a different card, and it gets very old and very frustrating, very, very fast. And the second factor that annoys people very much right now is the fact that Arisham Thanos is a good deck, and it shouldn't be.
Just like it,
Like,
like ethos, it just shouldn't be. It shouldn't exist.
it should not. A deck with how many cards are there? Like 30 plus
33.
cards? 33 cards should not be this good and this consistent. Like, this thing should not exist. This is an abomination and should not exist in the game of Marvel Snap.
Okay, see, like, I do take the opposite tack there. I think it's sick that something like that exists. I think it's awesome. Because, like, it's not actually that consistent, but, like, the way I've always looked at Arishem is the role it fills in the metagame is just, like, mid-range buster, where it's like, nice curve out good cards, idiot. I'm an energy ahead. My curve out good cards are better. Suck it, right? Like, that's kind of the ethos of every Arishem deck to me. And it's like, the fact that Thanos could just go in there and like be upside because you can do uncontested waves into the Thanos that's always in your hand, that rocks so hard. Like, that's like such a funny thing to do to a mid-range deck. Like, oh, nice incremental advantage, idiot. Here's 15 power on turn 3. I think that's funny, and I think it's like probably a good thing to exist in the meta. Otherwise, we just end up with like mid-range soup all the time. But I will admit, Conquest is kind of a blind spot for me. I don't play that mode very much because of the issues with matchmaking and the time-consuming nature of it and all of the other things related to it. I'm not really a Conquest gamer. Do you feel that there is a meaningful difference between the way Arishem shows up and you're like, I don't know the deck, versus I do know the deck, but I have to guess a 50-50 on 6-drops?
Yes, there's a very meaningful difference. I feel like it's the first and only deck for me that's meaningfully different on ladder versus conquest. It is outrageously more powerful on conquest than it is on ladder because he hides behind the fact that no, you don't have the information and they can do whatever they want. Like they might be running a Shang-Chi, they might not be running a Shang-Chi, they might be running, tech cards, they might not be running tech cards, they might have a crazy card in their deck, but you'll never know because you weren't able to see it 5 games in a row, 6 games in a row, because they don't have to play it. You're only listening to cards from their deck. Now, there's also a third factor that
Hmm.
annoys me specifically. You know, it's the fact that when I play against Irisham, they have the perfect hand every single turn. And then when I play Arisham, I have a 6-drop, a
Right.
5-drop, a 6-drop, Arisham, a 5-drop, a 6-drop, and that's my whole hand until turn 4, and I can't play a single card. And I'm just sitting there looking at my opponent, playing their, I don't know, their Cassandra Novas, their whatever, and there's nothing I can do. And that
Right.
happens so consistently that I just delete the deck so I don't have to suffer anymore.
This is similar to how every loss I take on stream is because of a sniper. Like, that's just how that works. Objectively, factually true. The game is rigged against both you and me, and the fact that we persevere through it is a testament to our character. Next up is a card I'd really like to talk about, and that is Anti-Venom, who I feel like has sort of... We've had different cards that have been like the core of mid-range decks before. Anti-Venom is the first one in a long time where it feels like this card is almost single-handedly reviving like low points and disruption mid-range decks to a degree that I feel like a lot of what making the best mid-range deck is right now is finding the best anti-venom deck. We have all of these original anti-venom decks, which were like very built around the idea that you have anti-venom Luke Cage, and then you want to be an Ajax deck because you're already running Luke Cage. But what I've found to be the most profitable in this space is be an anti-venom deck with Luke Cage and don't be invested in other afflictions, because that's how you beat the other anti-venom decks with Luke Cage. And this means that there are people, and I am people who are playing Ronan the Accuser, and it's one of the best decks in the game. There are people who are playing just like random BS Fenris Wolf mid-range who are playing, like Legion as their 5-drop, and it's one of the best decks in the game. And all of that is because of Anti-Venom, who has roughly an equivalent effect, as far as I'm able to tell, to Sarah, basically. If you hit a 2-drop or a 3-drop, you're getting Sarah value. You get a free card being played, effectively, on a 4/7 body. And that's really, really strong. Because obviously, if you hit something bigger than that, you're getting way above that value. And so you end up with what effectively looks like Pixie Mobius value, Sarah value, on a 4/7 body, which is just a very ridiculous card. And I guess I wanted to get your take on what you felt about the fact that this card, I feel like it's another one of those cards like Ajax that's underrated coming out of the gate. Not enough people get it, and now it's crushing. And I just feel like we're going to talk a bit about the economy later, but this is sort of emblematic of the issues with the economy, because now they can't get it at the price they would want because it's not in caches for presumably, I don't know, 6 months?
I feel like, yeah, I mean, that's true. The economy thing. I feel like I haven't played enough with Antivenom to form like a very good opinion about him. He does seem dependent on Luke Cage, like you said. And then when I did play with it a couple of days ago, and it felt like when I didn't have my Luke Cage, I wasn't really getting. Coincidentally, in a Ronan deck, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't getting enough value from the card. Like I was getting a 0/0 that was more or less like maybe doing something minimally or just doing nothing. So I'm not very strong on the card yet. I see what you're talking about. Like I see where you're coming from, but I feel like it hasn't really shown its teeth yet. I might be proven wrong in the next week because maybe you're just way ahead of the meta right now. I did play that Ronan deck, and I feel like Ronan just isn't really good in the current meta simply because everyone's playing discard,
Yeah,
and
Goon Knight
their
is
hand is
kind of eating
empty.
his lunch a little bit, and Discard is kind of eating his lunch a little bit. There is a lot of Discard running around right now, but I think that's kind of a reaction to the Ronin stuff, where it's like, the weird thing about Ronin is I don't think he's good either, right? Like, I kind of also think he sucks, but he's just a big guy for you to build around that's not going to die to your opponent's Luke Cage. Whereas if you build around Ajax, that is going to die to your opponent's Luke Cage. And so it's like, what this deck needs is that, right? Like, it needs just like something to do. And so Ronan ends up being like the least bad of the options because it has just the most things that you can hit with anti-venom and just be happy. Like, you have like Ronan, Mystique, you have Iron Man that you can just hit off of that, and it's just like totally fine. I will say the discard matchup is less bad than it seems, if only because of your ability with priority to like really screw up a Dracula. Like, really, really screw up a Dracula when you lose priority. With Maximus, with Master Mold, stuff like that will get them. And I do think it's very funny to see, like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play for them discarding a Swarm now. I'm going to play for them, we're going to put the 2 remaining cards in their deck in their hand and play 1 and 3 on the Dracula because they have a 20 power Apocalypse, and then it's like Lady Sif and Blade or whatever. It's not as dead to discard as you would think.
Is it not though?
It's
Because I
not.
feel like the new discard, the most popular version that everyone's playing, the one with Malekith
Yeah.
and Grandmaster, if they have like 2 discards hidden to pop after the end of the game, because those are going to pop off before Dracula.
Yep.
They can still clear up their hand before Dracula goes off. Maybe they're not going to get the huge Apocalypse, but it's very likely that they're going to hit Apocalypse nonetheless. And I tried the deck. I didn't get any nice high rolls like hitting like you said Iron Man or whatever, but it just didn't feel strong. It just didn't feel in the current meta, like in the context of the current meta, because I really was just running into discard after discard and then Arisham and so on and so forth. So I don't know if the card is that strong right now, but maybe I'm just I'm just a filthy casual and I don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean, maybe I'm just high on my own supply, Maybe it could go either way here. Maybe I'm just like playing a bad deck and convinced it's the best deck in the game because I'm winning with it, but it has nothing to do with that at all. Maybe I'm just goated, That's that. I couldn't even get through it. So let's talk a little bit about this most recent Deadpool's Diner, which I am fairly disappointed in. I do try to keep my criticisms of Second Dinner sort of limited to stuff I can try to speak on here. And I think that in the most fair-minded interpretation here, my read on what they did for Deadpool's Diner was they looked at the first Deadpool's Diner. They said, this was a massive success. And for the record, I believe that to be true. Based on all the information I've seen, player base spiked in that month. Like, it was a massive success. That month was very good for them. It did do what it was intended to do, which is bring players in, get them doing things that are interesting and unique and fun. People enjoyed it. Kind of. But what I'm worried about is that they missed several environmental factors for why that was true and sort of chalked it all up to Diner was good instead of looking at, environmental factors like, hey, the Deadpool movie came out that month. Cassandra Nova was the best card in the game and you could get her for free. And instead of looking at it in the context of those factors, they looked at it and said, oh, that means Diner was a success. And I think it was more the environmental factors making Diner a success. And so when they made Diner 2 and didn't do many changes because they came into it with the assumption that Diner was a success, you end up with a lack of changes because of that, because it's like, why would you fix something that isn't broken? And so you end up with the worst part about last Deadpool's Diner was the actual game mode. The best part was the rewards and the tie-ins with Deadpool the movie, and we don't have either of those this time. We'll get to King Atri later. And so now you just have a mode that I feel like personally, they were like, all right, we're going to take the bots out. That's our big one change here. We're going to improve the UI. The UI is better. And when they took the bots out, it was impossible for anyone at high MMR to get a match, basically, at 400k plus, which breaks the entire game mode because you can't act. The whole point is multiplying bubs by like a factor of 10 every table you go up. If you can't move up tables because you can't play against people at those tables, then you are unable to play the game mode. That's where I found myself. And that sucked for me, but I am glad it seemed localized basically specifically to, like, not necessarily super high MMR, but just like anyone who plays a lot had this issue. I think that ultimately they came in with the incorrect mindset about Diner, which was that there wasn't much that needed to be fixed and they just needed to add polish. And that is how we ended up with Diner 2 being what it is.
I agree with everything you said. You were very polite in saying that I think it is another case of them misinterpreting the data. Like they have the data, they see the numbers, but they don't analyze it in the context of why do we have these numbers. Like they get the wrong message, they get the wrong signal. And another factor that is very important, and I think you missed, Diner was the first new mode in the game, the first new way to play the game, right? But between the first time it came out and the second time it came out, we had another event. We had another new mode to play the game, High Voltage, which was, in my opinion, a much bigger success. I don't know the numbers, but it was much more enjoyable to play the game with High Voltage, and also that specific mode offers itself up to a lot of customization. Like they did a ban list, right? Some obvious cards they banned that would extend the game because it was just 3 turns, right? That would extend the game and so on and so forth. But you can build on that. They banned locations, they banned cards. You can build on that, right? Because at the end of the day, High Voltage was all about Arisham and Wong and not Arisham, sorry, Alioth and Wong. That's what it ended up being. Like, well, ban them next time, and then you have a more enjoyable mode, and then you can keep like rotating the ban list and so on. Anyway, enough about that. Let's go about talk about Diner. The reason it was a success was not because people liked playing the game. In fact, I would say it was the opposite. People did not like playing the mode at all. There were threads in Reddit. There were multiple, people in streams where people were just, the purpose of those was just to donate bubs to alleviate the pain of having to play the game and just get the card earlier, right? And I think they addressed that too silently. There are some rumors. I don't know if they're true. And then the other way the mode was made tolerable was through bots, and then they removed the bots also. So I feel like they did receive all the wrong messages, and the main reason played the game was, I think the only reason people played the game was because Cassandra Nova was literally the best card in the game at the moment. It had the best win rate, the best cube rate, the highest play rate. It was just crushing everything because Arisham had just come out recently, the previous month or 2 months ago, and everyone was playing it. And Cassandra Nova was the best way to counter that deck and that strategy. So yeah, all in all, a very big disappointment. And I hope they learn their lesson this time and they don't bring it back ever again. Just stick to High Voltage. That's a good mode, in my opinion. It's fun. 1 week, that is all you need. Get the new card within that 1 week. Change up the rules, mix it up, and just stick to people having fun, not being stressed and trying and just losing all their bubs and getting a message. Did you know that the first time you lose all your bubs, I don't know if it's a bug or if it's intentional, you get a very misleading message.
The one about buying back in for a high price? Yes. Yeah. I got that message. And then I clicked off of that message, and it turns out I could buy back in for a much lower price. And that I did notice. I was like, whoa, that probably shouldn't be happening.
Yes, that is. I don't know if it's intentional or if it's a bug, but it should not be in the game. That should not be in the game. Like, it really sent me on a trip. The first time I lost all my bubs. I lost all my bubs, by the way, to a bot.
Same.
I got sent to zero by a bot, which was not fun at all. Another point that isn't fun. Like I feel like bots in that mode should be loot piñatas, like just give you free bubs and you move on until you find a player. That I feel like that's how they should be. They shouldn't be a challenge in a mode where you can lose all your currency and not be able to play. I mean, you can make the argument, just retreat, don't give them all your bubs. But if I retreat and I lose 80% of my bubs instead of 100%, what's the difference, right? I still have to go play down on a bad table. So yeah, that was another factor that I did not enjoy. And then I remember I got I got cashed out. I got destroyed by a bot, and then I saw a message to buy back in for 3,850 gold.
Yeah.
That's around 60 euro in my currency. And then I'm like, wait, that doesn't seem right. It really like it was I don't know. I didn't like it at
Yeah,
all.
and then you click
And
off, and it turns out you can buy back in for 100.
yes,
Yep. So with that in mind, I mean, I think it's both of us have been trying other games recently, and I do feel like it's important to like talk about that. A lot of people ask me like, KM, are you gonna leave Marvel Snap? My answer is absolutely not. I have absolutely no desire to do that. The only thing that could force me to leave Marvel Snap is if I was unable to continue to earn money as a content creator in Marvel Snap. We have not hit that point. We have not come close to hitting that point. But it is worrying to me that I feel like I have to hedge by looking at other games, by making content for other games, because I wish that wasn't true, because this game has all the bones necessary to be a 10-year game. This game could be that, and it could be that for me, and I don't want it to be anything other than that. And I think it's worth talking about, especially in the context of competition. I want to frame this specifically about card acquisition, I think, because Pokemon Pocket is a card acquisition simulator that makes card acquisition fun. The gameplay, I think we can both agree. People get way more mad at the gameplay of Pokemon Pocket than they should, but I think we can both agree Marvel Snap is a better game, on balance, gameplay-wise, than Pokemon Pocket is. But it is fun to collect cards in Pokemon Pocket in a way that it has never been fun to collect cards in Marvel Snap. Even and I don't even know if that's necessarily, price point agnostic, right? Like, it is fun to do that almost regardless of the price point because of like the cool things that are happening when you get cards. I can't really explain that other than to say that like Marvel Snap took the fun out of collecting cards. That's what it feels like to me after playing Pokemon Pocket. And I genuinely wonder if like they could literally keep all the numbers the same in terms of how much money you'd have to spend, but just put everything in booster packs. And like you open 500 Squirrel Girls and you can convert them into like foil finishes and stuff. And if people would just think that is just like 10 times as fun as what we have now.
I feel like again, you made the perfect point. That is the biggest problem when you compare the two games. Card acquisition. I feel like at this point, where are we now? 2.5 years after the first closed beta of Marvel Snap, we can safely say that the unique collection experiment has failed.
Yes.
That doesn't work. Card gamers want cards. That's what we want, and we want to be able to play with the cards. And the way that Marvel Snap has aggressively, hyper aggressively, I might even say, monetized card acquisition just doesn't sit right with card game players. It's not the way to do it. Like when you're playing a card game, obviously you're going to monetize card acquisition. Obviously, that's what everyone does. It's not cards aren't going to be free. If they're free, we're going to shut down. The game is not
Yep.
going to work. We've seen that many times over. There's many examples. You can just Google that. Many games that have given out the cards for free and now they're not
Runeterra!
operational, right? Yeah. So you wanna monetize card acquisition, but not this aggressively. Like one card costing, I don't even know how much one Series 5 card costs right now. I think it's something between 50 and 100 euro, like for one card. That is outrageous, dude.
Right. And it's justified because it's like, oh, well, we give you all these other cards for free. And it's like, okay, I don't care. Like, I just want cards to be cards. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I got all of Series 3 for free. That now, it now feels like it's not worth spending money on Series 3 because you're going to get them all for free anyway. And it feels like you're getting screwed when you spend money on Series 4 and 5 because you got all of Series 3 for free. It's like it doesn't feel like something that makes sense to your lizard brain in any real intuitive way. And I feel like people would get it way more. It's like Pokemon Pocket, the drop rates are ass. Like I have spent $400+ in that game because yes, really, I just like opening packs because I like opening packs. It's fun.
I had the same problem. I had to stop myself from.
Yes.
I spent 250 euro, and then I had to stop myself from spending more money because I was addicted to opening packs. But I put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah, but like, here's where I'm getting at. I've spent all that money. I did not open a second Raichu. Just the base Raichu. I had to craft it. I didn't open a second Raichu. That's ridiculous. Like, you could get totally screwed because the numbers are so bad. For the record, I have like 2 Crown Rare Mewtwo's didn't have a second Raichu. It happens, right? Because the numbers on it are like 0.357 or something like that to get that specific card. And it's like, that can happen. The numbers don't have to be good or in your favor. When you look at Pokemon Pocket's numbers, they are very small chances to get the cards you're actually looking for. And the more cards you have, the less likely you are to get the card that you're actually looking for. But it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you actually have a chance to get it. And people, like, there's a reason card games have done booster packs for so long, and it's because people like them, even if they're not a good value proposition. And I feel like what Marvel Snap needs is to just look at Pokemon Pocket's acquisition system and be like, oh, how do we do that? How do we do a thing where, yes, you might open 95 copies of Squirrel Girl, but when you open 95 copies of Squirrel Girl, they turn into splits. You know? How do we do that? How do we do that? How do we make packs without boosters in them? Is the number one question you're going to have. Even if those cards end up being functionally equivalent to boosters, you still want them to open cards. And that's the thing that really sticks on me, is like, if I open packs and there's boosters in them, even if opening a second Squirrel Girl that is effectively X amount of boosters, it still feels better. It still feels better. It just does. I can say that conclusively after playing Pocket.
It does. It does. Card like opening packs in Pocket is so much fun. And then the other thing is that there is quote unquote a pity system already in place in Pocket, because you said you used it already. Like, you didn't get the card you wanted, you crafted it.
Yep.
Especially if it's a cheap card, like you crafted. I crafted cards in Pocket too. That's why I only had to spend 200 and something euro, and I didn't spend a ridiculous amount. Like, only, it's a lot of money, I know, but I needed all the cards because I made content on it.
I did spend the last $100 so I could make a video that's like, here's what you get for $100 at Pokemon Pocket. So it's less like specifically because I needed to, and more because I wanted to whale for full art trainers, of which I got 0, and make that video.
I want a full art Sabrina, if I'm being honest. So what Pokemon has proven, right, with the way their card acquisition works is, well, first of all, we need to point out that you can get the full base set for free within about a month of gameplay. If you want to be free to play, like, you can have everything you want. So what has that proven? It has proven that you can make card acquisition approachable, affordable, let's say, right? And then make the shiny cards, make those expensive, and then you can make a ridiculous profit out of that. Like, just
I'd imagine there's like some economy of scale there, though, right? Where it's like, because it is Pokemon, it simply has access to more people. And when you have access to more people, you can bring the price down by some amount just because of the more people pumping money into you.
I don't know if the numbers are correct, but I heard that they made like
$120 million.
170, I heard, first 3 weeks.
Yeah. And like,
100, that you know what that number is?
I think it's more than Marvel Snap has ever made.
I think that's the exact number Marvel Snap made in the first year.
Yeah. Like it
made it in 3 weeks. Like,
right.
Just to put it into perspective, how successful that model is compared, like the model we have here in Marvel Snap is just frustrating. It just creates frustration. It just creates feels bad moments. It just creates so many moments where you just, you're upset before you even start playing the game. It happened to me recently. In the last 3 weeks, I had to use 4 keys to get the new card. I'm almost out of keys, and I've spent thousands upon thousands of dollars on this game, and I'm almost out of resources. That should not happen.
I one banged Fenris Wolf.
Yeah, I was the one top man for a year, but now I'm not.
King Atri kind of sucks, right? Just not a card that is necessarily worth going out of your way for. Way more agony than Cassandra Nova is the impression I've gotten. You know how I know this is I don't own the card. I don't feel the need to go get it. Like, I think with Cassandra Nova, I was losing my mind. I have to go get it. 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 With Agony, with King Atri, it's just like, I don't really care. Like, I'll get that when I get it. It'll show up whenever it shows up. It won't matter to me in any real conceivable way. And that's probably a good thing long term because the stress Cassandra Nova put on the player base, I think, was ultimately a bad thing. I think everyone got, like, I feel like that was a very unpleasant situation to be put in when Arishem was the best deck and the counter was there and it was a really good card. And maybe it's probably better that these rewards are not like amazingly good cards, but like cards that are aimed a little bit lower. And that makes sense to me. The issue, I think, then becomes, well, why play the mode if it sucks? And I think King Atri sort of brings that to the forefront. Is if the card sucks and the mode sucks, which I'm not saying that's necessarily my opinion, but it's not far off my opinion of Deadpool's Diner and King Atri, where it's like I enjoy playing ladder more than I enjoy playing the mode. And I don't really like King Atri in the first place, and none of my friends who have the card have felt like it's actually worth picking up and that it's actually good. I usually trust, like, when it comes to underrated cards, Butt is a guy that I typically tend to trust. He got it, like, day one. He built with it, and he was like, this is awful. I can't play this card. Even when I high roll, I lose. And so it's like, I don't know. Maybe he'll show up in some Thor decks. Thor's pretty poorly positioned right now. But you can do things like Thor Monkey that are kind of interesting. Like, I've seen some okay-ish looking stuff, but okay-ish doesn't really move weight. You know what I mean? And so this card and this mode, the combination is interesting to me because this feels like what we're seeing right now is sort of Deadpool's Diner's floor. They fixed nothing about the game mode. The reward is not very interesting. So weirdly, if this ends up still being a successful game mode for them, I guess that just means it's a good idea.
I feel like it's not going to be a successful game mode.
Yeah.
Everyone's complaining about it. Looking at the reaction from different forums and streams and all that, I feel like it was a mistake. Like at the very least, they should have kept piñata bots, as I call them, just free bobs, just free bobs everywhere, so that people, it's supposed to be a casual game, and then you bring this game mode in that basically poker on steroids, and it's just stressing people out. It's just creating unnecessary stress for everyone. It's good that the card isn't good, yeah, but I feel like the card isn't good not because it's the card itself is horrible. Like the card itself is actually very interesting. It's a one cost that pulls cards from your deck. That sounds very interesting, right? But the card is very bad because the shell that you want to run it in is very bad right now. I was looking at statistics, and actually, what's his name? The four cost with the hammer,
Bill.
Yeah, Berare Bill is the worst card in the game right now, according to Untapped. So I feel like that's more the problem with King A3 than King A3 himself being a bad card. It's a card that goes into a pre-existing shell, and then the question is, does he move the needle enough to make that shell good? The answer is obviously no, it doesn't.
It does not. There's been what I would like to describe as a lot of copium around series drops recently. I've seen a lot of people like sort of wish manifesting, oh, they're going to drop 30 cards this time for sure. And I got to tell you, I don't really see any reason to think that. When I look back at the other drops, none of the underlying things that people are saying are justification for bigger drops have changed since then. Like, they were dropping 12 cards or whatever 6 months ago, and all the issues with Giant Series 5 were still there. I see nothing that indicates to me that they have noticed that this is a problem yet. And I feel like, I will say, I don't know how close to my NDA I'm going here, but I have used the avenues available to me to try to convey to Second Dinner that I believe this is a problem. That is what I will say. And I generally feel as though, just from the outside in, that I can't figure out what their thinking is on drops. I can't figure out where they are in terms of a larger collection rework, and I worry that we are getting really close to crunch time on this, that they don't really have much more time to punt things off, which is bad, because if we get something rushed and awkward, that could act like, when I think of things that could kill Marvel Snap, the only one that comes to mind is a full economy rework that fails. That's the only one that comes to mind. Like, that is when I think of like what would kill this game. messing this up would kill this game. And so I understand why there is like, all right, we have to get it right, so we're going to go slowly on this. That is my read on what's happening here. It's not a good position for them to be in, though. I will say that. Like, I do think that they have put themselves in a position after the move to Spotlight caches was regarded as like, and now it has gotten so much worse with the bloat in Series 5. I worry that messing this up is the one thing that could actually kill this game. People talk about, oh, they're going to kill the game with a bunch of stuff. Arson's going to kill the game. None of that's going to do it. Messing up a second economy rework could. I genuinely believe that.
Second economy?
Yeah, the first one was Spotlight.
7 now. Economy rework. They keep reworking the economy, and the problem is that they keep making it worse. Like, it's just a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, and now we are in a spot where we have 72 Series 5 cards, and if you miss a card from a Spotlight or a Season Pass, you won't see it for months, maybe even years, depending on how they feel. Like, it might even be a full 12 months before you see a card at this moment. And then dropping a few cards, like, even if they drop, like, let's say 3 months worth of cards, right? Which is a ridiculous amount. It's a ridiculous amount of cards. It's how much? Maybe up to 15 cards. Let's say they drop 15 cards, right?
Yeah.
Series 5 is still getting bigger and bigger. Like, there's an urgency here where they just need to say, okay, we have enough Series 5 cards, so we're going to be dropping more cards than we're releasing, or the same number of cards that we're releasing, because you're going to drop them down to a number, and that number is going to keep growing immediately after that, right? It's not like you're going to drop them not down to a number and that number is going to be stable forever because of how they're doing drops. It feels like they're doing drops because the community wanted them, and the drops are like, there, we drop cards. Are you happy now? That's how it feels like.
I feel like what it actually is like, knowing nothing about their financials, my best guess is that whenever they do series drops, it's like a massive hit to their revenue. Like, that's my best guess, is that, like, contrary to everything everyone says, their model is fairly successful, and doing series drops makes it less successful. Like, in the very immediate term, doing series drops is a hit to their revenue. And I feel like that is, like, I typically like my explanation for all this stuff is, it's money, right? Like, and I feel like their reticence to do this has to be because of that. Like, it has to be because, like, when they do this, they are taking products that they could be selling for money and they're giving them away for free. And it's like, you know what? You're right. That does suck for your bottom line, but that's not our fault. You're the guys who made the system like that. You know what I mean? Like, you're the guys who made it all or nothing, either very expensive or free. If there was some sort of middle ground there, well, then that would be not as devastating for you monetarily, right? And that's what I keep coming back to, is like, I think that this system puts them in a bad spot, not just us. Like, it puts everyone involved in a bad spot.
I think the system is just F tier. It's just, it doesn't work. It's bad for everyone. They're not happy. We're not happy. No one's happy. In fact, I feel like they've repeatedly said, or I remember them saying that the system is very generous, but it doesn't feel generous, and that's what they need to address. I feel like that's wrong. It's not generous at all. It certainly doesn't feel like it, but it also isn't. Like, a person who, like me, when you're not doing the expansion thing where you need to spend every new expansion, but you are allowing people to save resources, like a person like me that's literally spent thousands upon thousands of money, of euro, dollars, whatever you want to say, on your game, and is at a spot where he's running out of resources. That should never happen.
I feel like it's very specifically not generous to whales. I think objectively, it is fairly generous to a free-to-play player. Like, just think about, like, the percentage of the cards you get for free in the game. It is probably fairly generous to a free-to-play player. I do not think it is remotely generous to whales, as a whale. And I think that's probably, fine, right? Like, soak us to subsidize the rest of the game, sure, whatever. I get it. But it is worth pointing out that, like, I think the system, I think their assessment is correct. It is relatively generous, But the reason it's relatively generous is because the vast prices on Series 4 and 5 cards are subsidizing all of the free stuff, right? So you get all this free stuff, then it's all subsidized on the back end. And that creates like a sort of cognitive dissonance where you're like, well, I got all this stuff for free. Why the hell am I paying for this stuff? Why is it that price? That seems insane. It's just a game piece that's the same as what I have. What the hell? What the hell am I paying for here? And that is where it really feels ungenerous. Is once you have all the free stuff, you're just like, why am I spending money in this game?
You get all the free stuff, and then you hit an unimaginable wall. That's the problem. Like the wall after you finish getting all the free stuff is huge. And then the funny part is that a lot of people, when they start playing the game, they complain about the rhythm, the how fast that they're gaining the free stuff. And every time someone comes in the chat and says, "Oh, I'm not getting cards fast enough," and I'm like, "Oh, what collection level are you? You're like 2.5K or whatever." And then immediately I'll say, "Oh, wait until the free stuff dries out, then you'll see what not getting cards fast enough really means."
All right, y'all. On that bombshell, it's time to end. Thank you so much, Ivan Cambest. He has been Ordinary Harry. Make sure you check him out on Twitch and YouTube. And of course, thank you so much for making it through that video. I know it was longer than normal, but that's what happens when you get Harry and I together. We kind of just yap. Thank you so much, Ordinary Harry, for joining me. I also wanted to point out, for those of you who have like astute eyes, what's been happening with my camera is you see this like patch of light behind me. If I cover it up, the adaptive lighting gets brighter, but if I take it off, the adaptive lighting gets darker, and I don't know how to turn that off, so someone please tell me how to do that in my settings, thank you, because it is annoying the crap out of me. I am a gamer, I can't see the sun. Anyway, thank you so much. I've been Cam Best, he's been Ordinary Harry, and I will see you in the next one.